All right. The last thing I think I want to talk about with Vinny is this steel toe business. Because it caught my eye last week. And I don't know. I haven't been paying attention to steel toe. So maybe this is a more common thing. But this clip just caught my eye because I happened to hear, I guess John has been DMing with April,
that
the steel
out.
toe guy's wife.
Yes.
That checks out.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess he's been DMing April. And that conversation made me wonder, what are the steel toe guys up to? And so when I went, this is last week,
April.
If you need a room in Atlantic City.
If you ever need someone to talk to, April, you can call me anytime.
If that husband of yours gives you any problems. I'm only kidding, but also I'm not.
I would never want to fuck you, April. You're far too attractive and young. That's just not what I'm into, so don't be freaked out if I ask you questions about anal.
You're barely older than my daughter. There's no way I want to fuck you.
By the way, it is -200 that he will eventually contact DJ Electrify. I'm putting that out there now.
Oh, interesting. Hey.
Yes. Mike's brain is working.
What? Well, never mind. We'll
off the air. Yes, let's talk off the air. You've already given way too many on the air. Let's do off the air. All right, let's just steel toe.
Yeah, so he's messaging with April, and I checked in, and this was the most recent video they had published at the time. We just didn't get to it last week. So it's a video from, I don't know, 8 or 9 days ago. But it's him talking about the Dabbleverse. And I was curious. I'm curious to get Vinny's opinion on this because I think he incorrectly assesses a lot of things, and it's interesting coming from him. So I found this to be an interesting clip. Let's hear a little bit of it.
Yes, and I call it white knighting.
There's some of that, yeah.
He's white knighting.
Yes, all right.
That whole Dabbleverse group of people, I've said for a long time now, it's just a bunch of fucking whingy pussies. Like, it's really, really bad. It's not people who do shows and have a good time. It's literally just a gaggle of people who talk about each other constantly and just gossip about each other. And then, like, I don't know if they want to be edgy or they want to be cool. I don't know what the ultimate goal is. But God, they whinge and whine and cunt and bitch about everything everyone else does.
Can I ask Hack Ride? Because you might have better insight here than me. Who's he talking about?
He is, okay, so as the Dabbleverse goes, he's sort of a pariah on the outside. He's tried to nibble his way in a bunch of times. And everyone's like, get out of here. Get away from our ass. Quit smelling our ass.
Yeah, by the way, I don't have a Aaron's his name, right?
Yes, Aaron Inholt.
When he first started popping up, like, I liked a couple things that he did, and I remember messaging him, like, when I was trying to get out and do more shows. I was like, oh, well, if you guys ever want to have me on, he kind of blew me off, which, whatever.
So what we have here, ladies and gentlemen,
it's a vendetta.
Rapes. Is what we have here.
No, I'm prefacing it by saying, like, I don't have I see him getting a lot of shit on Twitter. I don't dislike the guy. But when I heard this clip, my main reaction was like, is he talking about, like, Carl here?
Yeah, yes, it's that side, right? So it's the Shuli Carl side. Because he has to be provocative as a radio man, so he's going to basically take Stuttering John's side.
That's what stood out to me. And maybe that's his thing. Maybe I'm just talking about this ignorantly. But to me, it felt like shock jock radio. Like, I'm trying to stir up a beef with these guys. Even though, as I remember, like, he was trying to get in with them. Like, much like I said, I tried to get on his show. He did their shows, right?
Well, he was trying to be, I know for a fact that he said he was going to be at DabbleCon, and then he ended up not coming. So I know he was trying to definitely get involved. And I think that when he got involved, when he started putting his toes into this universe, he was met with a giant, tsunami of, this fucking guy's a beggar. We don't like him. So to me, like, there's no reason for this guy to say nice things about the Dabbleverse. That audience is never going to embrace him. He's got a better chance being like Kevin Brennan, being one of these people who's anti the Dabbleverse, because those people might take his side.
Well, to me, so the reason that, like, my original introduction to him was I think he interviewed Kumia, and I thought he did a good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how like I kind of got interested in him, and then I just fell off for whatever reason. But my knowledge of him was someone that tried to get in with Carl and Shuli and all those guys, and then like failed at it. So I didn't like when I heard this and was like, oh, is he bashing them because he can't be part of the club? Like, to me, that
Yes.
seems kind of shitty. And
Yes.
it sounds like shock jock radio type stuff, which maybe that's his thing and it works for him. But when
Yes.
I heard this, I was like, weren't you the guy, like you talk about Chad Zumock and all these people from like, it feels disingenuous. It would be like if I out of nowhere was like, you know what's really gay is talking about Stuttering John.
Yes,
Like,
imagine that.
it just doesn't feel real, you know?
What's interesting to me here is it does feel like sour grapes, but
Yeah.
if he is talking about Carl, Mike, it's a pretty ballsy move on account of the fact that people have been begged him to do a show about Steel Toe, and Carl
Yeah.
didn't do it. Carl has never fucking done anything to rip on this guy because he
That-
doesn't like people that he's dealt with that he's met. He just doesn't do their shows because he's met them and had any type of relationship. He doesn't fuck with them. He's never messed with this guy. So this would be really shocking if that's what
That's what took me by surprise, and maybe I'm reading too much into it. But when I heard the clip and I was like, oh, Carl went out of his way to like protect this guy and not shit on him. It would
Yeah.
be weird if he was, but maybe I'm misunderstanding, but the more you listen to it, it sounds like he would have to be, unless he's specifically talking about Shuli.
Yes, and then you would have to carve that out, and he doesn't carve it out. So he's clearly talking about everyone that's on that side.
Right.
Well, the only
But
reason he would bring up the Dabbleverse is to get the Dabbleverse's attention.
Exactly. Like,
And
duplicity in the Dabbleverse. Oh, no.
It caught my eye, but I don't know if a bunch of people reacted to this or not.
Well, nobody watches.
This guy said this. This guy said that. How I can't believe. Like, they're all a bunch of pearl clutching pussies. Every time someone has an opinion or
But
does
then
something,
I
they
looked
all-
through some of his show is like Chad Zumock did this, Patrick Melton said that. It's like, is your content different because it's not Stuttering John, it's someone else?
Well,
Like, that's what I don't get.
Human nature. We are what we complain about.
Like, if
Yeah.
I was just talking about Red Bar and was like, all this guy does is criticize shows. Anyways, here's Joe Matarese, folks. It wouldn't make any fucking sense.
Right. What is it that shit that Vince the lawyer says? All criticism is self-criticism.
That's right. Yeah. Which,
Yeah.
I would take everything Vince says at face value. But
I gotta say, like, Vince does give some pearls out there. If you wipe off some of the bullshit, there is a pearl under there every once in a while.
sure.
Well, I mean that's true. Like to go out there to purposely just go on your show to criticize someone like that or whatever. If this just came up in conversation, it's a pretty strong take, but it does feel a little forced.
But you know what's interesting is too, there's an element of it that I get, because there are people, this is again, maybe if he's talking about Reddit or something, there are people where it's like, hey, let's get John in trouble. Vinny, you and I dealt with it with you more so with Phil Elmore,
Yeah.
where it's that element of it does bother me. And if that's what he's talking about, I'm kind of on his side. This is where the whole reason I prefaced it with like I liked Aaron at a time, and then I kind of stopped interacting with him, or he stopped interacting with me, was that like, I'm not a guy that goes on that subreddit and is like, fuck this guy. I've never really understood the hate against him. Mine was more, is he shitting on people that helped give him an audience? Like, because to me, that's kind of shit, because I'm a very loyal guy. Like, I don't like when I see that shit.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of loyalty politics in the Dabbleverse. I think that's pretty clear to everybody. But this guy's not really a part of it, and he's taking shots. So it's for attention, clearly. And honestly, if he is talking about Carl, like I said, it's kind of addicting to do because Carl has had his back. And if he's talking about Shuli, then I don't know.
Well, let's hear a little more. Maybe he clears it up.
light their fucking nutsack hairs on fire and run around in circles. And I didn't understand until My Lost Interest came around with his videos that it's not that I wanted out of that. It's that I didn't want to be associated with that style because that's not my style.
Mm-hmm.
My style is talk about shit, be funny, say whatever you want, cover the news, do all that. And I never really fit in that world because, again, and the Dabbleverse people like to get mad at me, but look in the fucking mirror. That's who you should be mad at. We here at Steel Toe do an actual morning.
Steel Toot.
And Steel Toe. Yeah, both of them. We do an actual morning show. I'm sorry. We cover things. We bounce around from topic to topic. We take our listener input. We don't just sit there jacking ourselves off talking about everybody all day. And once in a while, I'm more than willing to do a little clip, but then it's onward and upward with the show. These guys make their entire... Oh, and also, when we finish our show, we go out and do our shit. Like Johnny has to do a battery. I have to pay Johnny. A bunch of shit needs to...
One thing I'll give him credit for is, like, I just happened to find this. He didn't label it anything to do with the Dabbleverse. He didn't say Carl by name. So as much as it seems like maybe something he's saying for attention, like, I actually just thought it was an interesting perspective he was coming from, and I disagree with him, but I did think it was an interesting take because it feels like he's talking about Carl, who does a genuine show. So I don't know where he's coming from with that.
There's part of this that I agree with. I mean, there's parts of a lot of criticism that's valid.
Again, that's why I presented it like, hey, I'm not being someone on Reddit who just wants to fuck with this guy. Like, there's
so
some
he
shit
didn't
in here
label
where...
this Dabbleverse. He didn't put it out there as like its own clip or anything.
No, it's actually, I think it's like a Chad Zumach related thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just happened to watch it.
I mean, like I said, if he's talking about Carl, it's pretty shitty because Carl defended him, but whatever. I mean, he's welcome to his opinion.
I'll go ahead and take the other side. The guy's a giant piece of shit who's already blocked me. I've already had dealings with this asshole.
You may have a vendetta, Hackride.
He's just not funny. You try to be funny with the guy who blocks you. Oh, I do a show. Anyone that tells you that they do a show, guess what they don't do? A show. You don't talk about it. You do it. You don't say, I date models. You admit you date models. This guy is a jerk. Jerkster.
There's a chance I've used that phrase before, so I'm not gonna. I won't comment on this. But Hackride, don't you see? There's an element where, like I said with you earlier in the show, where like I didn't understand you were fucking with Luis J. Gomez. I thought you were telling me about a real complaint. So like there might be stuff that he's perceived as like people fucking around on Twitter, where he's like, I don't get it. Are they mad? Are they pearl clutching? What's going on here?
Well, just take a break from watching your wife get fucked on the bed while you watch in the corner and do some research, Aaron.
I don't know anything about that. But
no, but so if this is the move from the dabblers that get pushed out, right? The guy that peed on OJ, Phil Elmore, like whoever gets pushed out, they're like, well, not Phil Elmore, but let's say Rob Saul. That's a better example. They run to who will accept them, who will accept me in this world, and they always end up with Kevin or someone like that. But that's what he's doing. He's maneuvering here to be somewhere where he could be accepted in this world. He's not making some grandiose theme about what this world is. He wants in. We're not letting you in, bitch. You can let your girl in.
I feel there's a little bit of that to this. Like I was saying earlier, like he realized that the fans of the Dabbleverse aren't embracing him, so the people who hate it might.
Right, I guess that's what I mean is like if he was on WATP every other month or something like that, would he be saying this about the Dabbleverse? That's the part that felt disingenuous to me. But to Vinny's point, I think he's making some good points because if he's talking about if he's talking about Carl, that's the main issue I had with it, then he's wrong. But if he's talking about like Phil Elmore, then I 100% agree with him. By the way, where do you stand with Phil Elmore now? Has there been any? Have you two patched things up, Vin?
I don't talk to him. At the time, I just said, Phil, good luck with your life, best of luck, whatever. Go do your shit, and then I stopped paying attention.
Yeah.
Like, Mike, here's the thing, man. I'm so not interested and involved in the Dabbleverse. Like, Cardiff fills me in or Carl will fill me in. That's how I know what's happening. I'm pretty bad at about watching this shit and keeping up on it.
I'm pretty good because I am interested in it. But yeah, there's an element that he's talking about that I understand his point. I just don't think it's the majority the way he's describing it. I think the majority of people that I've seen and that have interacted with this show like seem to have fun with it. You know, and I think there's a way you can talk about John that's different than how Shuli does it or Carl or whoever, where like that's the main feedback we've gotten. Like when I talk about John or when I say, should we keep talking about John, is people say like, yeah, because you do it a little different than some of the other shows. So like if Steel Toe found a way to do that where he's not maybe getting down in the mud, like, I don't know. There was this blanket statement that was confusing to me, which is why I wanted to play the thing on the show.
Yeah, it did. I don't know. If that's what he thinks, that's what he thinks. Who gives a shit? I didn't give a shit before about Steel Toe. I don't give a shit about him now.
Is there how much more to this hack ride? Should we finish it?
Oh,
Or is that
yeah, we're almost halfway done. And just a little note that you
Jesus.
probably don't know, Blind Mike. He wears a corset. He's a man who wears a corset. All right, here we go.
Well, hack ride has an axe to grind.
What?
No, he does. It's a proof. He wears a corset because he has bitch tits. There we go.
And look at his
A lot of
eyebrows.
shit.
Is a corset like a girdle or?
Yes, he wears a man girdle.
It's like what
You see-
Shatner used to wear on T.J. Hooker.
Honestly, it's what Blind Mike should wear on the KMS show. Honestly,
Wait,
hey-o.
That's not happening. You know, my wife has to go put glue buttons on things, which is code word for just gangbangs. But these guys they talk about each other when they're on their streams. And then when they're done with their streams, they go on the internet and keep fucking talking about each other. And I think to myself, when do you live a life? When do you
But that's the problem. That is their life.
And I shudder to think about that.
Well, see that
It's
that to me is silly though. Like he doesn't talk about his show on Twitter.
That
You
makes
know,
does-
like that's what I don't understand is the idea of like, oh well, they do it on their show and then they also do it on social media. It's like, yeah, but the people following them on social media, that's what they're interested in. Like I don't get that angle.
Yeah, it's
Fucked
a
up.
weird that's a weird take because you expect anybody, like you said, to promote their show and talk about their show with their fans. Like you put an episode out there, and if people try to have a dialogue with you about what you did or put out there, it's fine to comment and talk about it. That's what you want. It's engagement,
Right.
is what he's
Yeah.
describing.
No, hey, I take sunset photos. I don't do show stuff on social media. Like what are you talking about?
So the other thing I can't stand about that world is that, and I mentioned it a little bit ago, the pearl clutching. Oh, we're going to say everything. I mean, that whole Dabbleverse thing is built around bullying a guy. Like that's the beginning and end. That's the sunrise and sunset, the alpha and the omega of this whole Dabble thing, is we're going to harass and bully another man in Stuttering John. So then when people have a take about other people within this universe and they shit on them or whatever, these pearl clutching fucking pussies, each one of them do a man, but did you hear what so-and-so said? That crosses the line. That's too far. There is no too far. There is no
See,
crossing the line.
this is where I thought he was talking about Carl with the whole his dad's cancer thing.
Yeah, he might be now. Now it sounds like he is. And I get why people feel that way, but here's the deal. The Dabbleverse did not start just to bully John. The Dabbleverse started just observing John. The whole thing
Right.
was like, just watch his shit. And it's turned into something very different than it was when it started. I'll give him that. It's evolved and there's very ugly sides of it. And I feel like I don't know if it's a good thing, Mike. I don't know if it's a good thing or not. It's entertaining as shit and it's funny. I know that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think John becoming self-aware, I think ruined a lot of shit. Like I thought it was very funny to talk about John, and believe me, I like the gossipy angle of it too. But
Yeah.
I thought it was funny to talk about John in a way where, like we just talked about Joe Matarese, where he's not aware I exist at all, or Carl, or any Vinny, or whoever. Like he has no awareness. He's just talking politics, saying dumb shit, misreading the super chat, having his fucking green screen behind him fall, whatever. Like it was just organic silliness. Now every episode is him talking about Carl and Shuley, which is a weird element to it. And it's why I said to those guys, like, I think it would be funnier at this point, because I think now we're at the point where John needs them more than they need him. Carl in particular, but I think Shuley too.
what's happening is it's turning into a self-fulfilling prophecy. John screaming, they need me, and them going, we don't need you, but they do keep covering them, and it just keeps,
Yes.
it's
If they
snowballing.
if they took let's start with a month or however long, undisclosed amount of time. And I think John would lose his mind if they weren't talking about him. And I think that'd be fascinating. Like, that would be more interesting to observe than him being like, Kate, I never wanted to fuck you. You got fat arms. It's like, okay.
I mean, the shit is entertaining. Like when Cardiff will send me a clip or Carl will send me a clip, I'll laugh. I'll fucking legitimately laugh. It's funny. But I also, man, I don't know how anybody seeks it out. It's so weird to me how people find this thing. But it is very, very addictive, I think. I think people
Sure.
get get way too into it. And like I said, the more people get into it, the more of it they want, and the more it takes away from what it was originally. When people need to remember, this thing started because WATP covers podcasts. Okay.
Right.
And I mean, I know that Royce and Mersh and those guys were covering John a little bit before this, but Carl does one show about John, and John responded by saying, "I'm sending people to break your legs.
Yeah, I'm going to sue you,
Yeah.
cease and desist. Yeah.
At that point, it was a fucking marriage made in heaven because Carl could watch that shit all day.
I think Carl just put out, like, they did a best of this week, and I think he did the first time he talked about Opie and the first time he talked about John.
Oh, I gotta listen.
And it's interesting because if you go back and listen to that, they talk about John the same way they talk about every other show. If John handled it the way every other show does, where either they ignore it, they never hear about it, or they have a funny response like Cumtown did or someone like that,
Right.
it's over. That it ends there. If John didn't threaten to sue Carl and react very angrily and say the mob was coming after him, like if John didn't do that shit, it's all done, which is what was fascinating, that this guy kept digging himself deeper.
And the other part about this that, you know, a lot of people shit on Shuley and whatever, but the fact is those two had a relationship that ended very sour. And Shuley, this is the thing people forget. Shuley had to ignore John talking shit about him incessantly.
Yeah.
And then Shuley just like, "I'm giving it back to you, motherfucker." And when Shuley did that, it turned into what it is now. Whether it's too much, that's up to the listeners to decide. But it came from John's fucking reactions.
Yeah.
John fucking started shit with Shuley. John called Shuley all sorts of names, and now Shuley's doing what he's doing. These guys didn't start off to bully John. Carl covered his show.
Yeah, it goes deeper than that. John tried to get Shuley fired multiple times from the Howard Stern show.
Yeah, I don't get the Shuley hate because, like, yes, did Shuley take something Carl was doing and run with it? And Shuley may have exhausted. This is probably the difference, ultimately, is like, I talk about Opie and John, things Carl talked about before me. I'm genuinely interested in those. Like, I don't think of it as ripping him off, but he definitely did it before me. And I'm interested in those, and a lot of the people watching my show also watch his show. So if you want to say, like, I ripped off Carl, you could definitely make that argument. I think the issue with Shuley is, like, he exhausted it. He does the Uncle Rico show every day, or however often he does it, solely about John. And that's where I think it got exhausting for a lot of people. But, like, the idea that, like, Shuley only, like, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is, I'm surprised Shuley gets... You're a Carl ripoff, and like other people don't as much for some reason.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
Can I mention real quick, because this isn't talked about much. The Dabbleverse is different to different people, so that's like the creation of the Dabbleverse. But to me, the Dabbleverse is a creator factory. I mean, you look at people like El Horrible, 2K, Stutjo Baloney Factory, Hackride, me, Corndiff, and then you have the second layer now, like the Electors and the Dooms. He was here before. The Greenbugs, My Lost Interest, Franklin Sheckler Quartus. There's all these new creators coming into these worlds.
Thanking people at the Emmys, asshole?
No, I'm just telling you what the Dabbleverse is. It isn't John. It's about the creators around John. Locals all over the internet, because now I've studied this, have a group of people around them that make jokes. We just do it the best. That's what the Dabbleverse is. We got the best locale, and we got real comedians in here. So it's like the best community. All that. You should go to some of these others. It's just normal people making fun of really weirdos.
Yeah.
But I think we get the gist of what Aaron was saying there. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting point. My intention was not to be like, fuck this guy. There were elements of that.
Fuck that guy!
I'd like to know what he was talking about. But I do think it was an interesting point that he brought up. And frankly, I think it inspired an interesting discussion here. We have our own point. Now I'm ripping off Point Dabble Point. Jesus, what have I done?
It did get boring, didn't it?